this computer. Okay, we are recording. Hello, my name is Kevin O'Brien, and this is the YR World interview series. Today, we are joined by Vicky Twomey Lee, who's joining us from Dublin. And Vicky has a long and illustrious career in the tech community in Ireland and beyond. So I'll let you introduce yourself. Let's sort of start with a quick bio, a quick elevator pitch. Who is Vicky Twomey Lee?
I don't know how tall your elevator.
Skyscraper,
right?
Burj Al Arab, Yeah.
So I started off as a coder, but most of my time now is involved with, as Kevin said, involved a lot with the Irish tech community. I suppose I've organized events myself, tech events, and at the time when there's still in-person events, I mentor and facilitate these in-person events. I also advocate diversity in tech. So those are all my volunteer kind of stuff. And my day job is a maker advocate with the Dublin Maker team.
Okay, let's actually just sort of start off with that. What's a maker, actually? We won't dwell on that too much, but just to actually sort of to deal with it, actually, because it is a very interesting subject.
If you are, you have stuff like high tech, you have 3D printing, laser cutting, and then you have right down to traditional craftings like wood turning, crocheting, knitting, jewelry making, and then all the folks who like to just take things apart and put things together. All the people like to tinker with electronics and things like that and messing about. Basically everything in between and more. So if you do anything with your hands, be it electronic or non-electronic, be it if you're young or old, everyone, you're a maker. You're making art, making everything. So my job is basically catering to anyone who likes to do things, just creative things, and experimenting and just having fun.
A bridge to, let's say, the R and Python world, maybe the Raspberry Pi setup. Is that part of the maker space?
Yeah, that'd be all like the electronic side of things. So you'll have your sensors. You have generally just getting into finding out how to use a Raspberry Pi. You're making games on it. You're streaming your movies over that. You're still making something. Right up to making your own robots or automating the watering system in your garden, all that kind of stuff. And sensors. I think the big thing now is sensors with checking air pollution, or the Raspberry Pi with their Astro Pi with the kids, where they send stuff out to space. They have a few Raspberry Pis up in the ISS, and kids get to enter competitions on what projects to put on it to be assessed up there. And then you have people sending up the Raspberry Pis up into weather balloons and checking, using the sensors there and getting the height and, using its gyroscopes and then sensing all the kind of temperature changes and things like that. So electronics is really much in there as well. Definitely.
I think there's very fertile ground for the R and Python community there with regard to sensors.
Yeah, especially when you're collating data. Definitely there's something that's an area where it's going to be very useful.
Yeah, good stuff. So your own background would be, or what you might be well known for in Dublin, will be Python. Just tell us about your sort of journey in Python.
So I encountered Python back in the early 2000s when trying to look for an alternative to make life easier than not using Perl. And so myself and my then like my now husband, we kind of found Python and we started using it as, kind of under the radar at work. This is early 2000s. So not many people are using it. If you try to do a search in Irish jobs, you'll only have one Python job up there, which is, your mind boggles if you try to do a search for Python in any kind of job sites. And when the first Python Ireland meetup came about, it was that person, it was Dara Sharon, who posted that job looking for a Python person, and he started a meetup to look for more Python people. And then we joined. He took a break, and then Sean O'Donnell restarted the following year. And then about 6 of us came along, met up every month, and we decided to say, hey, why not have talks? And I said, how hard could it be? Finding a space, finding speakers. and I took the ball and ran with it for over 11 years, which I don't. I'm so glad that the community has finally taken it off my hands, because over 10 years running doing running meetups every single month was kind of it takes a lot of work, I suppose, and I was starting to get more involved in other kind of areas in tech as well. So I was more advocating diversity in tech. I was focusing more on that. But Python has been a great foundation for me, because when we started PyCon Ireland in 2010, it was to get more experience so we can host EuroPython, which is going to come hopefully third time lucky. We'll get it in 2022 thanks to the COVID-19. They had to be cancelled, twice, postponed, not cancelled, postponed twice, I suppose. And with that, Ireland kind of got a bit of a recognition, because back then, you can imagine, 2010, there wasn't that many Python conferences around the world. There was the big one in the US, the main one. Then you have the European one, the EuroPython. Then you have, I think, French, Germans, Italians had their own. I think the Swedes, they had one, but they're the ones who start off EuroPython in the first place, I think. And then you have APAC. They didn't even have separate ones out in Asia, Australia, so there was only a handful in Up Pop Ireland. And I think because of the work we've been doing, and I managed to connect with a lot of people internationally. And I was lucky enough to be nominated as a fellow. And then, as a way of giving back, I joined their grants work group. They were kind enough to invite me. So I joined. I'm still with them, and we grant kind of we feel kind of applications that get passed down from the Python Software Foundation Board for people who need help to start up to get funding for their conferences, or for the PyLadies clubs, or for their Django Girls workshops, or anything that's Python related. So for me, I know what it was like when to start off somewhere where we had nothing, and how hard it was to get people's buy-in to support something that you really want, that you really believe in, and you want to bring the community together. And then it was really hard to get companies, because at the time, companies did not know what Python was. Nowadays, Python is everywhere, but it's still hard to get funding, right? And you still need that. I suppose you still need that backing, like, say, oh, Python Software Foundation backed you, so that's kind of a bit of credence to what you're doing. So I think a lot of, as I said, my foundation has been built from a lot of the Python community. They really helped when I asked for help. They really came out and helped you out. And they'd give you a lot of support. And from that, I kind of learned a lot from them. And I started to, as I said, I've started to branch out to kind of diversity in tech, to my other initiatives. And I kind of brought the spirit of the Python community with me to all the areas that I'm doing, including my day job, which is a community job as well. It's as a maker advocate with them. I advocate culture of making, connecting all the fragmented maker community. So it's much broader than tech. But yeah, all that kind of intertwined and started off from the seed that is Python, I suppose.
That's just actually there's a lot to take in there. So actually, what we could do is actually just sort of start off the early days of community organization. Let's say to the 2007 to 2012 era. Like, there was not a lot of meetups at the time. There was it was a very unknown thing.
Yeah, it was there was the Irish Linux user group. They had a mailing list. There was no meetup back then. Eventbrite didn't exist. So it was all word of mouth. So that's why the meetups were quite small back then.
Yeah.
And when I heard word of Python Ireland, it was through the mailing list that I got. And I think it was just really exciting to be able to go and talk to people that are not. I really like the people I was working with. I was working at Sun Microsystems, but it's nice to talk to people in a different company, in a different setting, and talk about listen and be completely confused about technology because you never come across it before. And that was the exciting part, because at that stage I was still quite early in my career, and I was trying to absorb all these cool stuff. You read about it, the register and all that. You read all the news from Silicon Valley and all that, but having to talk to other people who, like, back then, it was very rare. You might have a meetup once or twice a year, hear about it if you're lucky, a seminar or something like that. And I think some of the people that ended up with Python Ireland in the beginning did come from one of these kind of other groups, just companies just talking about their technology. And it was quite yeah, there wasn't, it was a very small community, kind of people kind of knew each other. As I said, there was no meetup and there's no Eventbrite, and when an opportunity to be able to connect with other people and learn other stuff was just so for me it was very rare and exciting.
Yeah.
And as the years progressed, I suppose people start forming their own groups.
Yeah.
I know there was, as I said, there's Irish Linux user group. Tog had their kind of their own events later on. I think Ruby Ireland was kind of one of the early ones, and you have the XK folks came when obviously when the iPhone came about. So they started around then. I think it was and then yeah, so it's just like very few, and never mind the diversity in tech groups. There was literally Ireland Girl Geek Dinners was the only one that was around that I know of, and I went to the first one and I was blown away. And that was the first one was by Martha Rotter, and I was just sitting there going, oh my god, if I could be just as confident and run stuff like this person and give tech talks, be just amazing. Like, I would never be anywhere near that caliber, and it's but I don't know how. Then Python gave me the opportunity, and platform is just, as people say, it's just standard practice that you have to talk to people. Like the first PyCon Ireland conference, I said, who's going to open up a keynote? And besides people halfway running out the door from the room and then looking at me, so I was kind of forced to stand in front of people. Same with the following year, got bigger, I had to stand in front of people, and I realized that I was just talking amongst people who are interested in the same thing I was, and they were just friends. They shouldn't be afraid, but it was still terrifying. So
Yeah.
like every time you run this, every time you give a talk, every time you organize something, every time you deal with the community and you talk about something that you're really interested in, it doesn't, like for me it's Python, for you and others here and YR, it's the technology revolving on R, is the excitement that you want to share your knowledge, and one way to do it is to bring that community together. And that's what I think, that's what Python was quite exciting for me at those stages, because it was early in my career, and
Yeah.
I met all these amazing people. Imagine like talking to all these kind of core developers. I didn't even know they were core developers until my other half, Michael, said, "You and this is blah from this," and said, "Oh my God, I was talking to who?" So it's kind of, it's small enough at the time. I think we were there at the right time where the communities are quite small, even the core groups, that you can just sit down and have a chat with them over a beer and coffee. Whereas now you really have to root them out, because the conferences are so big, they're in their
Yep.
thousands. These big conferences is just it's overwhelming and tiring, and never mind trying to seek out that superstar or that person that you want, that core developer, and have a chat with. So it has changed a lot, but it's very exciting that everyone has an opportunity to have all these events all over, because not everyone's able to travel to that one big conference nowadays. And okay, there's a downside of having, of this lockdown with COVID-19, but having all these remote kind of virtual events gives an opportunity for people to connect. If they
Yeah.
can't travel even to the next city over, you can still still chat with people online, and lots of different experts and stuff. It might not be the same, but you take where the opportunity comes.
Good stuff. Actually, just actually you sort of mentioned there that diversity and inclusion and those matters were not often discussed in open source communities. Open source communities being very small in that era. I think, would it be fair to say that you were one of the people sort of blazed the trail?
I wouldn't
In
say blaze the trail. I kind of poke at it and say, I've kept up with a lot of the news from abroad, and as you say, Ireland is quite a small community, so there's not much news going around, and people are doing the thing. People are kind of siloed in their own kind of groups and
yeah,
stuff. And if things never happened, then why should you bring it up? That kind of, at the time, like we're not the ones that cause trouble. Why are you bringing it up? There's nothing ever happened. but you hear all these stories, and year after year, it just didn't sit right that from say places like America, all the conferences and the events, that they have to put all these things in place. And they said, how come we can't have anything preventative over here, or just in case something happens, that we are prepared. So I decided to do that for PyCon Ireland. It was
Mm.
kind of, yeah, I think it was a proposal. It was a tough proposal to do because nothing, quote, nothing ever happens. But you know, like
This is the
myself,
code of conduct,
yeah,
the
like,
introduction of code of conduct as
yeah,
a standard
yeah,
practice. Yeah.
code of conduct, and then the introduction of financial aid. It's kind of, I think it's just trying to make people understand that it is very important. It is additional work. I think everyone is a volunteer, and there's just so much work to do. Why are you adding additional work? But I took it upon myself to do it anyway,
Yeah.
because it is quite beneficial. And in the end, more and more conferences started to bring it in. People start discussing it in the Irish tech community itself, the organizers realizing that it is quite important, especially if you're trying to get people to come to your events. And by seeing that you have, say, the code of conduct, that they feel safe going to your event.
Yeah.
As I said, just because also if you have the code of conduct doesn't mean things don't happen. It's just people don't report it. Like myself, I will see a lot of microaggressions, or I'll come across it, or it happens to me. I would just say, sure, why bother anyone? So I do it myself. So if I do it myself, even though I still try to tell people to report if I was running something, people just see that you're busy all the time, and they don't feel like, if it's not a huge thing, they won't report it, even if it's really, really, really small, and they only report if it's something really big. But thankfully, nothing like that has really happened to any issues. But it is, for me, it's kind of knowing that I'm prepared if something is, and also with the team, letting them know that if something does happen, that we can handle it instead of running around like headless chickens.
Mm.
Because the last thing you want is everything just blown all out of proportion because we didn't know what to do. Just
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
time. It's always that one time. And you say, well, and then what if? And then why we just get rid of that what if and just have it in place? It is not rule of law, but it is something that we can fall back on, and we have guidance on what to do. And I think that's what people are scared of, and saying, oh, you're putting all these rules and stuff in place. It is more helping the people who are running it, because at the end of the day, we are all volunteers. We're not
Mm.
paid to do this. We're not policing anything, but we want to protect ourselves, but protect the people who are attending as well. So we wanted to make it, inclusive and safe for everyone, as much as possible.
Yeah.
We are still learning. I'm still learning. I'm still talk to people, and and you still get more kind of uh from their experiences. You say, you never thought of that before. So
Yeah.
it's a never ending kind of learning cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It would be fair to say that having a code of conduct sort of sends a signal that stuff will be taken seriously if it does arise, and that the attendees know that in advance, that they're.
Yeah, I think it just lowers the traumatizations, because it's very traumatic if something happens. Both
Yeah.
how you get everyone panics, start to panic. And so if you have something like guidelines from the code of conduct and steps, because your brain will be like on high alert and panicking, and trying to figure out what to do. If you have a set of guidelines, you go, okay, I go with this.
Yeah.
If it, depending what it is, I will, if it escalates, who do I go to, what do I do? At least there's kind of steps, because I think it's just how we think as well. If we have something there that we can actually step through, instead of thinking on the spot while you're panicking, and it just happened to you. This is a rare thing that happens. And then especially if you're in a conference and you don't have those headpieces, and you have to
Mm.
shout at someone, go and find someone, blah blah. That's kind of, you're panicking. You're causing the person that you're trying to comfort, feel uneasy, and they probably don't feel comfortable, and everyone won't feel comfortable. So that's just me, as a feel how I feel, that having a code of conduct, having something there at hand that kind of
Mm.
supports you if something goes wrong. But yeah, it's kind of I just hear from people, talking to people, that they feel a bit more at ease, for if there is a code of conduct. Some people don't mind it, and
I
when
think
you
a
have
lot
it.
of people sort of see the sense of it now. Like there was a
Yeah,
bit of hesitancy about it, but I think everyone sees the sense of it.
it's normalized, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's there, everyone know we, it's there's not enough to say, oh, don't be rude or don't be an idiot, it's you're all adults here. That's all fair. Well, to say that, but at the end of the day, that's just not, that won't cut it, especially as your event gets, either it's a very small intimate event where everyone knows each other, and that those people won't come back to your event ever again, or to a big conference, which means that it's going to be in a very even more professional settings, because you're going to have corporates with
Yeah.
their booths there. How are they going to view you? So you have, as your event, depending on what it is, and depends on who's involved, depending on your sponsors, depending who the speakers are, everything is so intertwined that the reputation gets intertwined with that as well. So
Mm.
if by word of mouth, you already need the word of mouth to get your name out there, to get people to come along and share their experiences and attend and just enjoy the community. So you don't want, any kind of anything bad happens, that spreads like wildfire, like any kind of
Yeah.
so especially now, like with so many meetup groups, and Dublin, the this tech scene here in Ireland, especially in Dublin, is so small. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it just actually is sort of like there's loads great material that you're just to sort of questions asked there. First of all, I'll actually just ask about Coding Grace actually specifically, because this one does have a direct R connection. Tell us about Coding Grace, and who is Grace?
Okay. So Coding Grace is it's a not-for-profit organization, and it's formed in Ireland, and it's started off by an idea by someone called Andrea Magnorski, and she brought me and a few other female software engineers, and I brought Michael along as well, to have a brainstorming session in Tea Gardens about this problem about uh, getting girls in coding, and why there aren't many, and the ones that are there, they disappear after a while. So this was like back in 2012-ish, early 2012, or somewhere around there, or before that. And we kind of wanted to do a program, and it just, everyone just got busy. We got the name Coding Grace, we thought of it, and to answer your question, it's an homage to Grace Hopper. So it works kind of in both ways. If people know who Grace Hopper is, they kind of hopefully kind of connect that with Coding Grace. If not, it's just a very kind of a name that's kind of quite general, so you're coding with Grace. And so it's not like it's initially started off as a kind of female friendly workshops, but now it's more diversity and kind of friendly workshops. So it's kind of the name itself is general enough that we can be open to a lot more people to come along to our events, or join in and participate and get involved. And so while we didn't get to do anything with kind of the girls in coding, I was getting a bit kind of, I suppose, jittery, because I'm kind of a go and do it person. After a few months saying, oh, what am I going to, like, we need to do something. We have the name. And then Michael, my husband, was saying, why don't you run a workshop, which I never want to say, in a cafe, and run a Python workshop, which I've never done before. So in the end, we did our very first workshop. We did it in what's it called? The computer training,
CCT.
College of Computer Training out in West Warren Street. They just opened, and they gave us room for free to host our first workshop. We had about over 30 people at that workshop. And I think I remember that afternoon, I did the afternoon session. It was really tiring. We started early in the morning, and we wrapped in the evening. So I did the afternoon session. I was so tired and so sleepy from lunch. I couldn't even remember how to how to even do a proper if statement. I was going if
Yeah.
this, and then I go and I looked at Michael, and I looked at Rijal. I just said, like, okay, I'm stuck, can you help me? And they're looking at me saying, are you serious? You don't, do you really want us to help? I said, my brain, I have a hamster wheel in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My hamster is just sitting there and not doing anything. So so that was my first foray into facilitating a workshop. And I realized, don't do it after lunch when you're really tired, because you spend the whole day organizing, and then you're trying to teach something and you're
Your
just
energy,
really knackered. Yeah.
your energy
So
levels just
yeah,
drop. Yeah.
exactly. So, and then after that, we realized a lot of people want to do a lot of introductory into tech workshops. So I started to do a lot of like HTML, CSS, Python, JavaScript, and then a lot of people start volunteering. So skills from right across the board, all across the sector. So we also ran Raspberry Pi workshops. We done game making workshops. We done wearable. Oh, we even did wearable electronics. So at the time, what I wanted to do was bring bring the people who are working in the industry to give a glimpse to the people who want to learn about this tech. And because they're in the industry, that means it's what's hot right now, and also bring along the pro tips and the tools they use. So people say, "Oh, I don't know how to set up, don't know what editor to use," and then so hopefully that will give them kind of more informed decisions if they want to go into that industry, because they get to talk to the people after the facilitators or the mentors afterwards. And one thing I brought along to the Coding Grace workshops is what I learned from the Django Girls workshops is to have enough mentors in those workshops. So for every they said every 3, but I did it every 5 because I wouldn't be able to get as many volunteers. So for every 5 person, I will have 1 mentor, while the facilitators at the top giving the presentation or giving the workshop. So if anyone gets stuck, they don't feel like they're left behind, so they get brought up to speed. So so we try to make sure that it is okay for everyone to ask a question. It's never stupid to ask a question because everyone is afraid. I know it. I know what it feels like. And so yeah, that's how kind of the workshops came. I tried short workshops, long workshops, morning time, afternoon, evening time, all different days of the week in the early days of Coding Grace. And it seems like there's still a thirst for these workshops because people are still curious about what tech is. And as people are upskilling, as people are changing and upskilling, that they want to know if this is the area they want to get to. So for me, the analogy for me to people is always think of it as a community center. If you want to learn about art, if you want to learn about you want to learn baking and all that, you want to go in, do some short classes, but it won't cost you an arm and a leg. And you get, and then you have the people who are actually in the industry itself. So you get to dip your toes and also find out from the people in the industry what the area is like. And so it was for me, it was quite interesting, quite hectic, and it was quite fulfilling as well because we are not for profit, so we don't actually make awful lot of money on this because the money that we get in goes back into the workshops itself. And yeah, currently we are on a bit of a hiatus with the workshops, but we are planning hopefully something in the coming months. Myself and the directors were talking about, current problems, like going for tech interviews, for both sides, both the hirer and the people and the candidates that are attending these interviews. And there's always seems to be a lot of chatter around technical interviews right now. So we're thinking, we're looking into that and seeing how we can help the community, because that's what we're for. We're there to try and help the community wherever. So we kind of moved slightly away from the workshops, but we're starting to produce a bit of content on video as well. Myself and Michael, we just did one on introduction to the Raspberry Pi Pico. So we started venturing into making videos. I'm sure like yourself, so producing content so we can reach audience and just have content there, hopefully as long as YouTube is still there, for people to just get curious about technology. And that's what Coding Grace is about. You're curious about it, and we're opening the doors and opportunities for people to come and learn whatever technology it is. And if there's something that we're not providing, tell us, and I can go and seek out those people, because we're lucky enough to be in Ireland, where, especially in Dublin, where the tech scene is so vibrant, that I will find someone who is, in that field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually one last question there. You sort of charted the sort of history of the tech scene, the community tech scene in Dublin, from the small meetups to a very broad ecosystem where we had big conferences like PyCon and stuff like that. But now we're in the Corona virus era, and the virtual events are probably going to stay with us. So what is your sort of predictions about community building in the tech space in the future?
That's like for me, I'm still trying to find the community part.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been putting a lot of virtual meetups on for the past year. I know the first 3 months have been people running around like headless chickens trying to figure out what tools to use. And now we're pretty much settled on the tools to use. So most people are Zoom or use if they're bigger conferences, they use Hopin, or they use GatherTown for the more fun ones. And I find that as hopefully when in-person events are allowed in the near future, there's going to be a hybrid, because a lot of the stuff that we're doing now, it won't get lost, because I think a lot of people when they hear about events, they always ask, is it recorded? And even though, if you're in person, that means you have to go and find a camera, you have to, do editing and all that kind of stuff. Whereas say if you're streaming, it's there, it's on say
Yeah,
on
exactly.
YouTube or
Yeah.
Facebook or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And I think there's going to be a hybrid approach. It's going to be the benefits of what we learned from the past year running virtual events will be brought over as we're going to have more in-person events, because we find that people, we had a very big hesitancy that people won't come to events if we if we live stream something. In actual fact, we're actually limiting people not being able to access your events if we don't live stream it. Yes, people might do it from the office, but the thing is, there are people viewing your events, and they're not physically there in person. But then for people who wants to be there physically in person, they can network with the people. There's always that.
Yeah.
It's so different. You don't have that engagement. As I said, that was one of the things I don't have, is that interactive engagement as you do in person events.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing you're missing. You're selling. So that's the piece you're trying to get people when in person comes back. This is what you want when people want to meet people in person. I think the first few meetups is going to be jammed full of people, I would say, because everyone's just desperate to go and meet someone and talk to someone in person. But the hybrid one, I would say the hybrid approach would be nice. You have some virtual, some have some in person, and then some might have live streaming and in person. Why not? And you're trying to get to as much people, and it has been shown that people, not just if you're doing an Irish event, people from abroad are checking into the Irish events. So it's not necessary. So you'd be surprised who when they find your event via Eventbrite or Meetup, or by word of mouth, you can be surprised where they're actually watching your event from. It just blows your mind. They're watching all the way from Brazil. Oh my god, or India, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, the YR webinars, we had people from the Central African Republic.
Yeah,
it was a wow.
It's pretty cool, that you can reach people that far away. And I know it's still a big digital divide, but I think just by having making this virtual kind of this virtual content available makes a big difference. We'll have to figure out a way and how to get to the people who don't have that access, so that might be a social good kind of a project for people to try and figure out, like find a solution for that.
Good stuff. Vicky, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon in the real world.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was always nice to talk to you, Kevin, and catch up. Been too long. It's been too long.
Good stuff. We'll leave it there. I'll stop recording now. Thanks.
Yeah.
That was good.